Hello and welcome to our next video. Today we are going to cover the first super tournament of the year in a traditional way. As a tradition, this is the famous tournament in Vaikanze. Those of you who are following the super tournaments have already seen some of the games. I'm pretty sure about this. And today, at the moment, the third round is taking place. There are some results already, but I want to start this first video with this player, the local hero. His name, you probably know him. His name is Anish, originally born, if I recall correctly, somewhere in Nepal. Then he moved to Russia. Now he lives in Netherlands, so he's quite a cosmopolitan person. And for a while he was even world's number 3. As you can see in this picture, he's a little bit worried, and the reason for that is that in his second round game against Vladimir Kramnik, things didn't go his way, and after the moves c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, and queen b3, the two players quickly entered uncharted territory with the move d4. So Anish is playing as white, and he said in the post-mortem that in the after-game interview that he was very happy that his opponent deviated from his superb opening preparation, as he thought that he doesn't really have any chance of winning if Kramnik uses his usual prep. So here, this is already a very fresh, very new position after d4. I just want to mention that this bishop e4 move and the whole idea is a favorite of Grandmaster Rosenthalis from Lithuania, and he's one of the best players that are playing the Nimzo Indian out there. Of course, Kramnik himself and, I would say almost everybody from the top Russian players who is playing the Nimzo Indian, they understand this very well. And it wasn't really such a huge surprise that Anish decided to choose c4 and knight to c3 and to avoid the Nimzo Indian. But at the end of the day, with d4, he's entering this territory, and after knight f6 captures on c5, they're getting a very, very typical Nimzo Indian type of position. So the knight on c3 would be soon traded, and that happens after the tempo knight takes c5. Now in case of bishop c5, besides the immediate capture, there is also the in-between capture on c3, and only after that knight takes c5. So Anish had to lose a tempo. Basically, he made two moves with the queen. And therefore, he is so worried about his position. The rising position is not a problem for black for sure. If anyone is in trouble right now, this is white. Because these two pawns on c2, on c4, and on c3, and the pawn on a2, they're potential targets. The two knights in the middle of the board, they're extremely strong. It's not that easy to get rid of those two. And they're themselves creating a lot of threats. And what's more important, they're keeping the opponent's bishop in a bind. So the opponent's bishops are not going to show much of an activity. So that means that black would most likely have the time to finish the development, to go b6, bishop b7, and prepare himself to attack these pawns. And only after that he's going to start retreating those knights and eventually uncovering the pawns to take them. And for a while, everything was normal for Kramnik, so I would say that he was quite happy with his position. Look at him, how interested he is in it. And of course he will be happy. He managed to trick his younger opponent in the opening. However, after bishop e7, short castle, and short castle, rook d1, he committed his first inaccuracy, in my opinion, and in Anish's opinion too, queen to e7. Before that, the Dutch player admitted that he was thinking tenderly about making a draw in this game. You know that Anish is famous for making a lot of draws. But after queen e7, he believed that he got very close to that one, and that he got very close to leveling the chances at least. He was more afraid of the move queen to c7. The idea being that the queen is not only putting pressure on the pawns on c4 and c7 and c3 from there. The main thing is that now this counterplay that Anish has after that with a4 and a5 is not going to happen that easily, as the pawn on b6 can just capture on e5. That's one thing. And another thing is that even if this happens, the queen is controlling the b6 square. So I'm not sure why Kramnik decided to go from this side, but in any case, this seems inaccurate. And after a4 and a5, white manages to get rid of one of the weaknesses. And not only that, he creates a weakness in the opponent's camp himself. It doesn't really matter if black is going to take on a5, there will be a weakness on a7 in that case, or if he allows the capture on b6, in that case there will be the weakness on b6. Plus, what's more important, the white pieces are coming into life and he will get some chances along the a and the b files. If before that he had absolutely nothing to do, now it is becoming more or less double-edged. Still, I think that black was a little bit better here at least, and had he have found, I'm pretty sure that he was considering this move knight f6, my feeling is that white would have to work very hard to make the draw here as well. It wasn't too late to come back with the queen on c7 in case of a need. So the idea behind the move knight f6 is to make sure that this bishop, the Catalan bishop, that Kramnik himself, he likes to get in so many openings, and Giri himself, by the way, he likes to get it, but this bishop is not going to cause black any problem. So there is an additional bonus. If white tries to attack this pawn on b6, of course there comes bishop e4, so the e4 square can be used for the bishop as well. The other bonus is that in comparison to the game, if he tries a move like knight e4 in similar ways in the game, or knight d2 or knight e1, knight anywhere, then black will have the time to trade the bishop. And now, first of all, he can use this diagonal for his queen. So the queen will be ideally placed there, defending on b6 and helping the rook on e8. But also there will be some additional ideas like knight g4, give me that bishop. Bishop doesn't want to get taken that easily. And whenever it goes back somewhere, bishop d2, bishop c1, doesn't really matter. Black is going to start attacking the weakness on c4 immediately. So further on, he might consider this idea to attack it. And as a whole, I really love his position. Honestly, I think that black has very big advantage in the stage of the game. So not sure what happened, but Kramnik decided to play f5. This looks aggressive. It is aggressive, but this knight on e4 didn't really need any additional protection. This overprotection wasn't needed. On the contrary, now the pawns on e6 and on d6 are becoming somewhat vulnerable, and even on the long run, this king will be having some issues. And then Giri took on b6, a takes b6, knight d4. The situation has changed, and he's getting his pieces out. So next he wants to jump knight b5, start attacking this pawn, or maybe he would like to go for the b6 pawn itself. And after knight to f6, even though these two bishops are traded, we see that that first of all, this queen couldn't take on b7. It couldn't go to b7 itself, as okay, rook e8, and knight b5 will drop that pawn on d6. And therefore, Kramnik has to take in a more, I would say, obscure way with the knight. He will have to take with the knight, and now simply rook e8, and knight b5, and white got a lot of activity. So this time he's the first one to start attacking the weaknesses of the opponent. The situation dramatically changed, and you can see one determined and very happy Giri with his position. Look at him, how happy he is. He is already looking at the position with great interest, and he sees that there are a lot of interesting possibilities. So that's the second part of the drama. Everything gets very complicated, and I think it was time for Kramnik to think about leveling the chances himself and going for the draw. For that reason, a move like knight d7 would have been best. He's defending on b6, and I'm pretty sure that Kramnik saw this one, but apparently he was afraid of knight d6. And after knight d6, queen d3 on the d file, this little trick is going to win white a pawn. However, if we continue this line a bit, we will see that with knight e5, first of all, he's regaining the one on c4, but what's more important, okay, he's dropping the one on e6, this is true, But what's more important, after rook c8, it transpires it's not that easy for white to keep this bishop alive. And to avoid an endgame where there'll be rook endgame with few pawns left on the board. In the best possible case for white, some endgame 4 versus 3 will happen on the same flank, which we know is a draw as a rule. The point being that if bishop d4, if he tries to save the bishop, all of a sudden this rook will get trapped in the middle of the board. There are no squares left for it. And this is all thanks to the beautiful knight on c4, which all of a sudden is controlling the situation. It's controlling so many squares. Well, therefore, after a move like rook c8, I think Kramnik would have gone for something like, Gary would have gone for something like rook e7, and I suspect that king f8 and this massive exchanges would have led to a draw. But Kramnik missed this chance, and he went into passive defense with the move rook c8, semi-passive I would say. Okay, he's attacking on c4, but this is passive as he's allowing the a file. He's giving away the a file to his opponent, and Anish is getting in there, not only defending, but he's preparing penetration on the a7, a6 squares, and then either some pens or sometimes even on the back rank. And it's getting more difficult for black to play. Also, there is a problem with the pawn on b6 still. Rook c6 doesn't solve the problem of that pawn, excuse me. As on rook c6, there'll be queen a8 check, and after king f7, just rook a1, and on the a file, there'll be an accident happening for black. So that's why Kramnik, no matter how difficult it was psychologically, but well, he had no other choice but to push his d pawn and to trade it for one of the double pawns of the opponent. So this d pawn, the double pawn disappeared, and Giri obviously doesn't risk anything, and he played bishop g5, so he saw a lot of tactical tricks, but maybe queen a7 or bishop b6 were worthy alternatives. Maybe they were promising more. The idea of the move bishop g5 is that this tactics, rook takes c4, would be met with queen a8 check, and Giri was hoping that after king to f7 he will have this trick queen takes b7 and that he will win a piece. The other line that he calculated therefore, and he thought that this is the only move for black, is if he goes 98, and he expected this 98, but then he calculated the following brilliancy: bishop takes f6, black has to take it. Actually, it doesn't really matter if he takes it with the queen or with the pawn. Probably it's not a big difference. There is still rook takes d5, and after this capture and check, white is regaining the rook on c4, and he'll be up a pawn with knight still on the board, and that will give him excellent winning chances. Most likely he's just winning. An important point here is that queen f7 is not a draw after queen d8 and check, because on queen f7 this time white doesn't have to repeat. He may just take on f7 and fork the opponent on the d6 square. And here it is. Everything disappears from the board. Okay, but Kramnik said, okay, I don't really care about your forks. You can do as many of them as you like. Take on b7 if you want, but let's continue this a little bit. Yeah, you have taken my piece. This is true. However, after rook c7, your knight is trapped. That's the second time that we see in this game in the lines pieces getting trapped. First, it was the white rook on e6. Now the white knight on b7. And have a look what happened in the game. Okay, Giri said, I know this is brilliant, I understand, I acknowledge that, but I need to keep on playing, and I still have my play on the a file. I'll go rook a1, and I want rook a7 to take this one for free this time. Kramnik blocks this. There is nothing else to do. And on queen b8, he finds another interesting defense, which is rook to c6. It should be added that at this stage of the game, all the players were under 5 minutes on the clock, which is quite a difficult situation for both of them, but I think especially for the second player, as he's on the defensive, and there are so many ideas that white has. One of them being to transfer this knight with tempos to e5, and that would be even checkmate. So right now, Girid at knight e4, he goes into this direction. And Kramnik bravely took the pawn on c3, or maybe recklessly took the pawn on c3. I think that rook d6 was his move to try and to defend this one. Apparently, he was afraid of knight f3. And then if king g6, there is yet another knight fork trick with knight e5 check, and then king g5, queen takes d6. So this time the fork is going to be really very, very painful for black. And although he has some chances to survive, I think that this should be good enough for white to win. But in this line, he wasn't forced to go for the fork, and after knight f3, he could and should have gone queen d8. So these two heavy pieces are defending the king on the 7th and on the 8th ranks, and on knight e5 he can safely move the king back on f8, avoiding all those really unpleasant forks in the time trouble. So white is better. He has plenty of ideas still, but black managed to coordinate his pieces for the defense, and I think that he should be capable of surviving this. However, all of this didn't happen because after rook c3, Kramnik blundered. On queen b6, he played knight c4, and on queen b8, he said, okay, it's time to just get rid of all those pins and enter some endgame. So it looks like a great idea. It looks like white will have nothing else but to attack this knight, and after the capture and queen e7, black will be safe, and he might be even considering playing a nice endgame, but this is a blunder which led to a trap of the black rook, all of a sudden the rook on the queen side. And this time it is the knight on d4 which is doing such a great job and is restricting his opponent's rook, but also the knight on c4 is not really helping in that particular case. And all of a sudden it was all game over for black, who had to resign after these moves, which were not really necessary. Kramnik had to give it up. So Anish Giri is on fire. It's very unusual for him to have so many points after just 2 rounds. Today he drew, actually. He drew as black against Fiddler, so he is on 2.5 out of 3, and he is leading, I believe. Some players might catch up with him, but normally Anish is winning or losing that many games for 3-4 tournaments, and that's a good sign for the young Dutch player that some exciting times are ahead of him. So let's see what will happen from this tournament. It looks very promising. The decisive ratio as usual is quite high, and I think it will grow even further in the course of the tournament. So thanks for